Have you ever found yourself memorizing disconnected grammar rules with no earthly idea of how these rules will ever contribute to a better understanding of the Quran and the Sunnah? After having taught 7,000 students over 20 years, what I've found and what I've discovered is that the entire Arabic language could be boiled down to just a couple of core issues. Grasp them, and you will be studying those things that matter the most, and you'll be able to accelerate your progress by a factor of 17, which means that you'll be learning 17 times faster. So in a moment, inshallah, I'll take you to a crash course on sentences led by my student, my friend, star pupil, Ustad Mohtanick Jamil. He first started studying with me when he was 16, and alhamdulillah, I'm so proud of him, mashallah. He single-handedly wrote over 100 full-length tutorials, original content on all aspects of the Arabic language, the grammar, the morphology, the reading, the vocabulary, the balagha. And you can find all of this at learnarabiconline.com. So this is material that would take an entire team of scholars over 6 months to produce. And he did it all by himself in a few short weeks. In the morning, I used to give him a topic and I would say, okay, now let's talk about reflection. Let's talk about the total possible ways the ism could be used. Let's talk about the ways that the ism could be reflected. And by the same day, in the same day, he'd send back to me a Word document, 16, 17 pages, that would cover that entire topic. And then we'd put it on the website. And like this, you go to the website, it's full of material. And you may know, or you may not know, that Ustad Mohtanick is actually legally blind. Alhamdulillah, I'm so proud of him, and his teaching and his way of explaining is crystal clear. And I'm sure that as you go through his crash course, which is only 10 minutes long, you'll get an appreciation. And inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will open for you as well deep insight and deep understanding of this beautiful language. And without any further ado, let's move it over to the presentation, and Ustad Mohtanick will continue speaking with you there.
So a brief overview of how Arabic sentences work. If you take any sentence, it will have a primary verb. Okay, that primary verb will either be the verb to be, expressed as is not, are not, am not, was not, were not, etc., or it's going to be some other verb. So if the primary verb of your sentence is the verb to be, then we're going to create a type of sentence in Arabic called a nominal sentence. For those of you who know Arabic, this is called a jumla ismiya. And if the primary verb is any other verb at all, any verb, then we're going to create a type of sentence in Arabic called a verbal sentence, or a jumla fi'liya. So how do nominal sentences work? Well, in English, you have the subject, in this case it's just one word, I. Then you have the verb to be, in this case it's am. And then you have the predicate. In this case it's just one word, hungry. I am hungry. The subject is what you're talking about, and the predicate is what you say about it. In Arabic, it works very similarly. First you have the subject, I, which in Arabic is ana. You don't have the verb to be, because Arabic doesn't have that verb, so you skip it, and you go directly to the predicate. The word hungry in Arabic is jawa'an. So I am hungry is just ana jawa'an. Now, that's pretty simple, but there's an issue here. What if the sentence gets really long? Because in our previous example, the subject, what you're talking about, and the predicate, what you say about it, were both single words. But that's not always going to be the case. When you get longer sentences, because your subject and especially your predicate can be made up of nested phrases and even nested sentences. And there could be a high level of nesting, especially in Arabic. So when you have a long subject and a long predicate, then how do you tell where the subject ends and where the predicate begins? Because there's no verb to tell you. Like, look, in English, you have the barking dog is in Zaid's car. Now, how do you know what the subject is and what the predicate is? Well, it's easy. You just look for the primary verb, the verb to be. In this case, it's expressed as the word is. So everything before is, the barking dog, will be the subject. And everything after it, in Zaid's car, will be the predicate. Easy. You just look for that verb. But since Arabic doesn't have that verb, how do you tell? Well, this issue, or if you want to call it a problem, it also exists in English to a certain extent. It comes up in the case of questions. So if I were to turn the barking dog is in Zaid's car into a question, I would say, is the barking dog in Zaid's car? So you see what I did? I pulled the is to the beginning of the sentence. Essentially, I no longer have the luxury of saying, oh, everything before is the subject and everything after it is the predicate. That's no longer the case. So you see, it does exist in English, this problem. It's confined to the case of questions. So how do I tell? How do we figure it out in English? I mean, nobody's confused when they hear the sentence. Everybody knows what it means, what's the subject and what's the predicate. How? Well, that's actually a difficult question, and I'll just tell you the answer. If you think about it, you'll realize that we know what the subject is and what the predicate is given our experience with the different types of phrases in the English language. Because we know about all the phrases in English, all the possible phrases based on our experience from childhood, we know that there's no other way to understand this sentence other than making the barking dog into one phrase, which eventually becomes the subject, and making in Zaid's car another phrase, which eventually becomes the predicate. The meaning is helping us out a little bit, but in general, it's our understanding of English phrases that tells us. Okay, so we don't rely on where the is falls. And that's what we do in Arabic. So one of the primary goals of Arabic grammar is to teach us the entire inventory of phrases in the Arabic language. There are about 12 of them. So when we understand all of them and we have enough experience with all of them, we'll know that there's no other way to understand this sentence other than making ana by itself the subject of the sentence, and أكثر منك مالا وأعز نفرا, turning that into a phrase and making that the predicate. There's just no other way to combine these. You can't say ana أكثر is a phrase and that becomes a subject. No, it's not possible. There's no phrase like that in we don't understand that there's no you can't analyze a sentence like that. Okay, now verbal sentences. So verbal sentences are easy too. It's nothing difficult. In English, we have Zaid hit. So first we have the subject, and then we have the verb. So the subject is who did it, and the verb is what did he or she do, or it. In Arabic, the only difference is that the order is reversed. So first you have the verb, and then you have the subject. So hit is daraba, so I'm going to write that first. And Zaid is just Zaid, of course, and I'm going to write that second. So daraba Zaidun, Zaid hit. Now, a verbal sentence can also have, apart from the subject and the verb can also have 0 or more objects. So Zaid hit Amr, for example, daraba Zaidun Amran. In Arabic, just like in English, I'm going to put Amr, the objects, after both the verb and the subject. We could also have adverbs. So in English, I put the adverbs after the objects. And in Arabic, I do the same thing. ضرب زيد عمرا انتقاما. Zaid hit Amr out of revenge. And after the adverbs, I can have prepositional phrases. ضرب زيد عمرا انتقاما في السيارة. Zaid hit Amr out of revenge in the car. Okay, so these are, I have to have a subject, I have to have a verb, and I could have 0 or more objects, 0 or more adverbs, and 0 or more prepositional phrases. And this is the general order in the Arabic language. First verb, then subject, then the objects, then the adverbs, and then the prepositional phrases. Simple enough, very similar to English. The only difference is that the subject and verb swap places. But there's an issue here as well, just like with nominal sentences. The issue is that while in English, I have to keep the order of the words. Like I have to say Zaid hit Amr. I can't just switch it around, Amr hit Zaid, otherwise the meaning changes. But in Arabic I can. In fact, I can pretty much have any permutation of the words. As long as I don't mix up the order of words in a phrase, as long as I keep each phrase how it is, I can move words and phrases around, and it really doesn't affect the meaning in any major way. For example, here, اليوم أكملت لكم دينكم. Here I have an adverb first, and then the verb and the subject, and the prepositional phrase, and then an object. You would expect, under normal circumstances, you would expect to see أكملت دينكم اليوم لكم. That would be the natural order. But here we see the order is mixed up, and that's perfectly allowed. So the question then is, how do I know which of these words or phrases is the subject? Which of them is an object? which of them is an adverb? If the order won't tell me necessarily, then how do I know? If I can just switch around all the words, how do I know who is doing the verb, who's the one who the verb is being done to, and so on and so forth? And notice the meaning helps me. Yeah, I mean, al-yawm can't be the subject of the verb because it means today. So obviously it's going to be an adverb. But that only goes so far. In general, how do I know? Well, in English, we have this issue to a limited extent also. What if I'm writing poetry and I have the phrase, he, she hates? I can do that. It's legitimate in poetry to do that. It happens all the time. Right? You have the subject and then the object and then the verb in order to keep the rhyme in the rhythm and the meter. So in this case, how do I know who hit who? Did he hit her or did she hit him? Well, how do we solve this in English? What we do is we have different forms for the for the pronouns he and she. We have he, him, and his. And for she, we have she and her. So these different forms tell us what role the word's playing in the sentence. So we could say, him she hates. In other words, she hates him. Or we could say, he her hates. In other words, he hates her. I mean, that might sound a bit awkward, but grammatically speaking, technically, it is correct. Okay, we can say him she hates. And now the meaning is determined. It's not confusing anymore. So in Arabic, we have something similar, except it's not just restricted to pronouns. It's in almost every word. Every word has approximately 3 forms. For example, if you take the word al-yawm, you could say al-yawmu, you could say al-yawma, like it is here, or you can say al-yawmi. These forms tell you what role that word is playing in the sentence. The word is just al-yawm. The vowel on the last letter is what tells you, is it the subject of the sentence? Is it an object? Is it an adverb? Is it part of a prepositional phrase? And so on and so forth. So because the vowel in the last letter tells you, you can mix up the order and still understand what the sentence is saying. And so the second half of grammar, remember the first half was about phrases, the second half is about this concept of the vowel in the last letter of a word. And there's a lot to be discussed regarding that.
Okay, so now that we're done with the crash course, I'd like to invite you to look under this video, and if you want to follow the same approach that Ustad Mohtanick followed and got him to this scholarly level of understanding of the Arabic language, then we have a premium program that has been in session for over 20 years. And the live classes, they only start up once a year. And our next start date is coming within a few short weeks, like less than a month. So if you're interested in following this approach, then get on the early bird list and enter your name, inshallah, and you'll be told about the program, and all the details about the program will be explained. And in the meantime, if you want to stay on YouTube and watch further presentations, you can watch my 3-hour workshop where I go through all of the material that we would normally teach in the first 3 weeks of class. And with that said, I look forward to speaking with you soon. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.